Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 143rd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly in order to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will consider our current state of class or cultural conflict, brought on by the left and right's unwillingness to accept that each has a role to play in governing our nation. Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Bryan Laubaugh. Write these things in wrong. Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Joe Gaines, member of the faculty of the University of Akron. Patty, politicians have been always attacking each other.
Yes.
But for the first time in my memory, politicians and others are attacking each other's voters. I've never seen that before. What do you make of that?
I think, thought about this for a while. A lot of it, I think, stems from the top of the party, where you hear the leaders of each party not going after the other leader for their policies or their views, but rather using the term Democrats or using the term Republicans. In other words, if you're a Republican, everything you say is incorrect. If you are a Democrat, everything you say is incorrect. Every Republican believes exactly the same thing, and it's that far-right, outlandish wingnut stuff that you think that everyone, because one person believes it, everybody believes it. The same thing on the other side. You hear Democrats called out as being the problem for this and the reason for that. And people take their cue from that. Unfortunately, I think one of the things you see is that there is an unwillingness then to compromise on issues. And not just to talk to people, but to listen to the other side, to hear their views. Perhaps one of the reasons, I know I struggle sometimes thinking, how can people back President Trump, for example? He's done this, this, and this. How can you accept that? You have to listen to the other side to see why they believe it, and sometimes you understand then. Perhaps there was, I've heard people talk about the fact that they weren't happy with the Democratic leadership of President Obama, or they weren't happy with Sherrod Brown, or they weren't happy with any other particular Democrat. And even though they didn't agree with everything that Trump said, they felt that they could at least give him a chance. But you have to listen to that. And then what are your issues? And is that leader going to address it? Unfortunately, though, we've gotten to the point where if you are you have people now that will say, I will never vote for a Republican as long as I live, and if it's a Republican principle, I can't agree with it, and vice versa. And I hear that constantly. When I talk about listening to other people, we have to begin to listen to what others say, not just take the short soundbite that comes off of the media. Because I can listen to two different stations, one leading left, one leading right, discuss the same issue and come out with a completely different opinion about the same event that has occurred, because they present it in different ways.
But here's the question that I have is, when you listen to one person give their view, whether they're saying I agree with Trump or I agree with Obama, if they disagree with you, they must be stupid.
Well, there are people that feel that way.
Yeah, I know.
Unfortunately, but like I say, you have to listen to them. The other thing is, when you're listening to politicians and so forth, I remember when Jerry Ritzman would speak here, he would always say, go to the source document. Don't criticize President Trump by simply a soundbite you have heard about him. Listen to the entire speech. Right. You may not agree with him still, but at least you're getting the entire opinion. Don't take Bernie Sanders' soundbite and say the guy is nuts without listening to the entire speech.
And then decide that he's nuts.
And then decide that he's nuts. Also, don't base your opinion of the other party on one person. Do not assume that every Democrat agrees with Bernie Sanders.
But do you think that we're in a different stage these days with how people feel about each other as voters?
Oh, absolutely, because we've placed that party label on everything. And the idea is, if I don't get everything I want, I'm a loser. Mm-hmm. And there is no compromise, and to win, you have to agree with everything I say. And that creates more division, and then the lack of understanding of others, where they come from, their beliefs, and why they're voting the way they vote.
I have a friend on Facebook that, in fact, I used to be her Sunday school teacher, known her for a long, long time. And after the executive order on the border declaring an emergency, whatever, she posted, "There is no emergency on the southern border. Got it? Case closed."
Well, that's her opinion.
Well, I know, and it sounded like a strong one.
Right.
And the inability to listen to why the other party feels that there is. And that there's probably some truth in the middle that no one is willing to go to.
Bryan, is there truth in the middle?
Yeah, it's just hard to get there. With social media, the velocity of which news, or what people call news, goes around the world nowadays, it's not hard to see why people think that if you don't agree with them 100%, that you're stupid or you're deplorable, or you're a lunatic fringe of some sort of party. I think we've lost the ability because of certain recent, in the relatively recent, probably last 10 years, with social media and the internet, it's polarized people. It's hardened their positions because they can go online and they can find people with the like mind. It's not hard to go online
they can have
and get that echo chamber
long credentials.
going. That echo
Rather
chamber.
anonymously, too.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
And so it feeds into that, and next thing you know, we're all walking around with tinfoil hats, worried about things that just are never going to come to pass, and that's unfortunate.
What's the next step in all of this? Is there a way for it to get better?
The thing is, I think that. Let me give you an example. Just recently, I've always thought that Joe Biden was an upstanding guy. He has a pretty long history of doing the right thing. He's probably he's probably a little more in the center than what some on the left want him to be. Yeah. And they're just gutting the guy now because he doesn't believe in their I would say their religious tenets, okay, and it's become a religion on both sides. Mm-hmm. And if you don't agree 100%, like Patty says, you're a heretic, And sadly, Joe Biden, he's been known as sort of like Creepy Joe sometimes. There's plenty of video of him getting a little too close to people of the opposite sex, and.
Or even of the same sex.
Exactly.
Close to people.
He gets in people. He gets into that personal space area.
But that there are an awful lot of people, including me, that tend to be touchers.
But I am. Unfortunately, that's the type of person that people could probably rally around and say, you know what, he's not going to take the country all the way over to the Bernie Sanders, AOC. Left, where we're going to shut everything down and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to defund ICE and all the crazy stuff they throw out. And it's not going to be all the way to the right and some of the inflammatory things that our current president throws out there on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So, I go back to the days of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Yeah. They worked together. Right. There were times that they disagreed. but they could agree to disagree.
They did some nasty name calling too.
Well, yeah, but it never.
He's an amiable dunce.
But to each other, not
But
to.
yeah, exactly. But it wasn't like on Twitter where all of a sudden
Right.
it went viral. And so
They'd argue, and then they'd go out and have a beer and talk it over.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think we're
Knowing
losing
Tip
that.
O'Neill, it was a lot more than one beer.
Okay, but
But still,
no stereotype there. You know,
yeah.
being Irish and everything.
Yeah, but that I think we've lost that because both sides have hardened their
Right.
positions and we can't sit down like we are today. I mean, when I see Patty in public, I say hi to her and all that kind
You
of stuff.
do?
Well, sure,
Yes, yes.
I
There's no fireworks. That's a little inside joke.
Yes, yes.
Joe, what's your
Oh,
thought?
I like that. I got that.
I don't get that. You can explain
We'll
it to me.
explain that
We'll
later,
explain
yes.
later.
That's a whole other
Well,
topic.
I totally agree with what's being said in the sense that we don't discuss anything anymore. We don't want to. I think we were fearful of getting into a discussion because I have to defend myself. Well, we don't want to listen. People don't like to listen anymore to whatever's being said. And there's a middle road, middle ground. And I think we don't realize that. It's either I'm right and you're wrong or vice versa, whatever. It's not like, well, I don't agree with you, but, I mean, like John McCain is a good example. I did not vote for John McCain. I did not agree with him politically, but I respected him immensely. And I'm really upset with what's being said about him now and how he's being treated, even passed away and everything. And even though I'm not a McCain supporter politically, I see a lot of what he said is honest, ethical, and moral. And I don't like how people, especially the president, is treating that his personality, McCain's personality, or his person. So I think one of the problems is we have a lot of fallacies. Fallacies are defined as reasoning which is not logical or not backed by a lot of evidence. And we use those fallacies. Bandwagon effect, ad hominem, Patty, I don't agree with you, but it's because you're blonde and you're a woman. That's why you have those viewpoints. And we attack her. We attack the person and not her viewpoint. And we do that all the time.
Do
The president does
you
that.
think that's happening with the attacks on Trump and he's being attacked for his personality and his
Oh, yes.
personal habits and all that rather than his policies?
But I think he's doing it too. I think he does it more than
Well,
think
yeah.
he opens the door for all that.
I think
I
he
mean,
kind of
I-
started
well-
it,
Yeah, he
actually.
started. I don't agree with
Yeah.
attacking
Doesn't-
him all the time
right.
like that. I agree with you, but at the same point, I mean, he said some things that are just ludicrous.
I know.
Well, one thing, Joe Biden said that Mike Pence, the vice president, was a nice guy.
Yeah.
That he was a nice guy. And he had to walk that back as quickly as he could because that flew in the face of what Joe has just been saying is that he's evil. Mike Pence is evil because he's a Republican, he's X, Y, and Z, he's religious, he's evangelical, he's evil. So you can't say anything nice about him. And that's one of the problems. I think that we've gone into the politics of personal destruction, and if anybody agrees with anything that someone says on the other side of the aisle at a certain level, you're a heretic. I mean, you can't say anything nice.
Well, Congress has changed. There's a term now they're using that Congress has become very tribal. And I didn't understand that at first, but the more I think about it, the more I do realize that I think they are. And I don't think that's good. Congress used to be like what you said. You had O'Neill and you had people who would agree to disagree and work it out. You're not going to get the civil rights movement accomplished unless you had both Democrats and Republicans working on it. And they did. When I was a kid, I kept thinking, well, the Democrats are moving the civil rights movement. Well, then I realized, no, it was both. And we're not doing that anymore.
There was a bigger percentage of Republicans in Congress that voted for
Right.
the Civil Rights Act of '64 than Democrats.
Right.
But then again, the Southern Democrats were
It
sort
was
of like
different.
a separate.
Yeah.
But we're
separate
also
party.
getting to the point with, in the House but in particular, if you don't toe the party line, you're going to lose that base.
Right.
And it's that core base in each party that is at the far extremes.
We need to make some changes.
That is driving the entire House and Senate because you can't afford to get primaried. And
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you see that currently.
Absolutely.
Our friends on the other side of the aisle have a very virulent strain of socialism that's taken over, and they've got a group, they call it the Better Congress or something. They've created their own PACs. They're running as many people as they can, and they're primarying people in the Democratic Party that they don't believe are as progressive as they are. And that's how this current young lady got in, AOC. They ran 10 people in the variety of districts. You know, I firmly believe you don't want to mess around with Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi. I don't care who you are.
They're vicious. Vicious women.
Yeah, it could get ugly.
They're astute politicians.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. You don't show up in their offices and have a
There's-
sit-in.
There's a theory out there that Newt Gingrich really is responsible for this cleavage between the parties, that when he became speaker, he changed the rules. Now, I think that the Congress used to meet Monday through noon on Friday. And when Gingrich came in, they met only Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then went home. And he encouraged the newcoming Republicans in the House to don't stay around Washington over the weekend, go home, be with your family. Well, before that, they were interfacing
With the other party.
Yeah. I mean, they met each other at Little League games and at different events. But when they stopped doing that, they didn't even know each other anymore. And you know, a young freshman congressman looked across the aisle at a bunch of strangers, and he never did get to meet them. But there's that theory out there that was the beginning of the cleavage.
And we've used labels so much now.
Oh
I
my
mean, the
gosh.
label, like liberal is, what, you're a liberal?
It's a dirty
I know
word.
exactly what you are now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that. I mean, it can mean all kinds of things. Like when you use the term socialism, you know, like there's some things I don't disagree with on socialism. There's other things I totally disagree with. But I mean, for me just to say, you know, you're conservative and that's bad, I think that's wrong.
Well, I think we ought to have definitions of those terms. Socialism, for instance, I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Well, people hear
Right.
socialism and they think Venezuela. Or,
Right.
you know, the interesting thing is, you know, one of the attacks I've heard now against the left is that we're going to turn the country into a socialist country like Cuba and North Korea. They're not socialists. They're full-on communists. So, I mean, that's
Right.
a misnomer. There are other forms of socialism. I don't consider Venezuela necessarily
agree with
a
you.
social. It's a dictatorship, is what it is. Big difference. So.
But I mean, it's like gun control.
Oh,
I mean,
my
you know, you
gosh.
could be for or against, but now, you know, this whole thing about, the carry, you don't have to have a license anymore.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tell a police officer that you have a gun in your car.
Yeah.
That bothers me.
Yeah.
It does me.
What do you think about this? Bill Maher, I remember when Bill Maher was a stand-up comic, and I thought he was hilarious. I don't think he's so darn funny anymore.
Not religion, I'll tell you that.
I like him.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Yes, I really like him.
He said, those living in blue states where people are having a big prosperity party, they want to be like us. Red state voters are dumb, poor, and jealous of blue state voters. Red state voters are so angry because they want to be like the coastal liberal voters. That's your friend Bill Maher. What do you think of that?
Well, I heard that because I do watch his show all the time, and I remember when he did that, he had a lot of preface to that.
Did he?
And a lot afterwards.
But it
So,
doesn't. It fits better for this program.
You know, Bill
right?
Maher's original show was called Politically Incorrect.
Right.
And
Yes.
that was the one that was removed from the networks
Right.
because of the comments he made after 9/11. Part of the reason I like Bill Maher is he's not. He can be politically incorrect. I mean, he will chastise both sides when they are wrong. He recently made a big stink about the fact that the Democrats were not going to allow Fox News to interview them and run one of the debates. And he said, you've got to do this. Why can't they do that?
Yeah.
He is totally against attacking the attacks on Republicans when they go out to eat, and the bans, you know, in restaurants saying you can't come in here if you're a liberal, or you can't come in here as a
Boycotting
conservative,
everything.
and boycotting everything. So, yeah, that's kind of the way I feel on that.
And then Hillary Clinton, another favorite of yours, she said,
Oh, her deplorable comment.
you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call a basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
Well, that's
That's
her
right.
opinion.
Yeah.
That's her opinion, and it was wrong. Do I think that there were Trump supporters that were
Yeah.
racist? Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you have David Duke coming out singing the praises of Donald Trump, and he said he doesn't quite know who he is, but he certainly didn't come out and say this is a lousy guy.
And it's too easy to take Hillary Clinton and put her in one area and only that area. I mean, she worked really hard for both Republicans and Democrats, for all kinds of people. And she, is successful, failure, and both. But here's a good example of a person that we just want to look at one area and one basic viewpoint.
What it is, she's attacking the voters. She's not attacking
Well,
her
President
opponent.
Trump does all the time. I mean,
Oh, certainly.
true. I mean, this is happening on both sides.
This is what, you started it.
No, it's not even a you started a thing. They're both doing it. That was her comment now. That,
Right.
And it was like that one sound bite.
It was wrong. I agree.
And it was wrong. I think that's a mistake.
What I'm asking, though, isn't that an example of attacking voters rather than
That
your
is
opponent?
that is an example, and it was a bad one. There's
Yeah, you can go back and, I mean, Mitt Romney said in that private group that he had binders full of women. The question was that would he have plenty of women to choose from in cabinet positions and all that kind of stuff, and that particular quote was taken way out of context, and they ran that up the flagpole, and obviously. It was one of the things that they ran with and attacked him.
the taped conversation at that fundraiser.
Right, at the fundraiser, he said that he had binders full of women. Well,
no, that was another one when he was talking about.
oh, then the 47%. He was stating these facts. That there are 47% of the people X, Y, and Z that get government this, that, or the other. I mean, he's a tactician. He was the governor of the state of
that was his
Massachusetts,
deplorables comment,
right,
unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help us at all when things like that. It doesn't bring us together when we start to characterize people that live in red states, the flyover states, as idiots and deplorables and all that kind of stuff.
No, and
I
she
mean,
doesn't.
I've never thought of our host here. I don't think Patty's an idiot. She lives in Ohio.
Well, why is it always me? It's never the
and John, I don't.
Well, Ron's not here.
That's true.
And
That's
We don't know
Ron,
him well enough to-
I don't know. Well, I mean, I know he has a great reputation, so I wouldn't throw him in that thing. But I think that's and you have a good reputation too. I mean,
thank you.
Patty's a good, a loyal servant of the public, and she deserves all the credit.
Yeah, she certainly does. If I still lived in Wadsworth, I'd vote for her.
You could probably still vote for her with all the stuff that's going on. That's another.
Another
There's-
topic
yeah.
for another day.
I always
yes.
wondered why, locally, do you have to be a Democrat or Republican to run for office in a local election?
Brunswick, you don't. It's the top. I think they have a that you're labeled Democrat or Republican.
Why even label?
People know who it is.
I mean, it's not like, if
But
you're
it's
running
not
I'm running as a
labeled.
Democrat for council, city council, so because of that, I'm against Trump.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
It's the right, and I've also
Yeah.
often said that if you walked into a local city council meeting, you'd be hard pressed to tell who the Democrats
Right,
are
right, that's a
and
good
who
point.
the Republicans are,
Yeah.
because that national view separation
Yeah.
just doesn't exist.
I've
there.
often said I was very proud of Wadsworth. Politics, I moved to Wadsworth in '64. In fact, ran for office twice myself, got clobbered both times.
yep, know what that's like.
But,
Lost by 3 votes.
but
Every
the,
vote
the
counts.
politics in this town have always been peaceful and
Yes.
cooperative and all. There have been moments, but I've voted for a number of Democrats, and I'm hoping that some of them voted for Republicans. Well, we talked about Joe Biden a few minutes ago, and Joe said, white male culture, it's an institution. It's got to change. Biden urged Americans to tackle a white male culture dating back centuries what has allowed violence against women to perpetuate. Now, you talk about a statement opposing what, 22% of the population, white males. That's another one of those divisive comments. But I think that he is doing whatever he can just to gain some favor.
When did he make that comment?
I
just
think
curious.
last week.
Last week?
Yeah.
Okay, because I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that.
Yeah, because they've gone after him, you know, for a variety of things.
And it's the Democrats.
Yeah, they're saying
that are
that Bernie
pushing it
Sanders, his campaign is sort of pushing this out there and that kind of stuff, and you know, it's got Joe on his heels, and so he's got to do something to tack a little farther left.
Well, wait till he announces.
I was going to say, yeah.
He hasn't even announced yet.
Yeah,
He hasn't even announced yet.
I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. This
Yeah.
latest thing with women just may be the thing that sets him back on
Does
his
he need
heels.
I mean, does he, you know, the presidency is something he wants because he wants to make changes, because he has ideas, political ideas, unlike some people who wanted to be president because they wanted to win.
I
Does
think
he
he
really have political ideas? What has Joe Biden ever accomplished in all the
Oh.
years in public life?
I think
A
he's.
lot.
I
Has
think
he?
he's looking
yes.
back and say, you know, sorry that he didn't run 4
Well,
years ago.
Right.
Next week we can
Yeah.
talk about all of that. Thank you very much. Good program.
Thank you.